Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Buckle up, because when roles reverse, karma packs a punch. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Office villain thought she'd never face consequences until she ended up in my department. Several years ago, I worked with the most spiteful, troublemaking woman, Mary. She and I applied for the same promotion, and she got it. I was okay with not getting the job because it really wasn't part of my planned career path. I just wanted the extra money. She was not in my chain of command, but she seemed to think her promotion gave her the right to treat me badly. She would make snide comments about me to my coworkers, who thankfully knew what she was all about and would stand up for me. She would try to assign work to me. When I'd refuse, she'd run to our mutual boss and complain until she got her way, and I'd have to take on the extra work. I'd suspected for a while that she was telling our boss lies about me, but had no proof, so I kept my mouth shut. Eventually, I was promoted to another department. In the days before I went to my new job, it was apparent that someone was sabotaging my work. Data was changed on files I was working on, etc. Of course, I suspected her, but again, had no proof. It all came to a head when she announced to the entire office that I was actually the one who was sabotaging the computer system. Of course, nobody believed her, but it was very upsetting to me. It got so bad that I made arrangements to go to my new job earlier than originally planned. For the next several years, Mary and I would have to work together on projects. I spoke to her as little as possible, and CYA was my motto. It was awkward, but manageable. During that time, I received several promotions and ended up as the director of my department. There are about 50 people in my department, and I mainly have contact with only the supervisors. I guess I'm known as the one to give problem employees to. I either get them to shape up or ship out. But I was very surprised when HR approached me about taking on Mary because she was about to be fired in her current job. My initial reaction was hell no. I really felt I couldn't be impartial and give her a fair chance, but I pretty much wasn't given a choice. What's worse, I couldn't pawn her off to one of my supervisors because of the work she did. She would have to report to me. After resigning myself to having to take her on, I started dreaming of how I would exact my revenge. There were so many possibilities. I was almost giddy with anticipation, but the sweetest revenge was on her first day. I called her into my office to give her my come to Jesus message. She came in with the most scared look on her face. I thought she was going to puke. I decided to have pity on her and start out softly. I asked her if she understood how she'd ended up here. She replied meekly, "I guess it's karma. You could have knocked me over with a feather." I knew exactly what she meant, but I wanted to hear her say it. "What do you mean?" I asked. She then proceeded to apologize for everything she'd done to me, including spreading lies and doing the sabotaging herself. I was about ready to admit defeat in the revenge game, but then I thought of the very best next step. I told her ever so calmly, "You know that you could be fired for that." I let that sink in until I saw the beads of sweat on her forehead. Then I said, "But I'm not going to do that to you. Instead, you are going to decide your fate at this company. You will not be able to blame me for what happens to you because it'll be up to you to succeed or fail." It felt so much better than using my power over her to get my revenge. She's still working for me, but I don't think that'll last much longer. Not because she's going to be fired. She's really improved a great deal, but because being nice to me is so hard for her. I don't think she can stand it, and will find another job, hopefully at another company. Killing them with kindness is the harder route to take, but ultimately ends up being the better option in the end. Killing them with kindness is the harder route to take, but ultimately ends up being the better option in the end. Good on you for making the correct choice, not the super petty one. And our second story. Ignored my warning about load safety. Enjoy your $3,000 composite rainstorm. A few years back, I had one of those moments where the universe just hands you a front row seat to someone else's poor decisions. I was pulling into a local lumber yard to grab a single item. Nothing major, just a small bracket or fitting I needed for a project at home. The kind of errand you're in and out of in under 5 minutes. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for my afternoon entertainment. As I'm crossing the parking lot toward the store, I notice this guy at the far end working furiously on top of his truck. He's got what looks like several stacks of composite decking, probably around $3,000 worth, tied down across the top of a truck rack. Now, anyone who's worked with composite decking knows it's a joke. It's heavy, awkward, and worst of all, ridiculously slippery when stacked together, especially if it's a warm day. That plastic-like surface becomes a slide waiting to happen. What caught my attention wasn't just the amount of decking, but what he was using to secure it. A single length of rope. That's it. No ratchet straps, no load stabilizers, just one long rope looped over the entire load like this was an episode of MacGyver Yard Projects Edition. Now, I'm not the type to mind other people's business, but this was like watching someone prepare to juggle chainsaws blindfolded. You just know it's going to end badly, so as I walked by, I gave the guy a friendly heads up. "Hey man," I said casually, "just so you know, that stuff's really slick. Rope isn't going to hold it in its place. You might want to grab some ratchet straps from inside." He didn't even look at me, just smirked like I'd asked him how to tie his shoes. "Don't worry, I got it," he said in the smuggest tone possible. "Alrighty then." I shrugged and went on my way. I figured, hey, I tried, not my problem. True to plan, I was in and out in under 5 minutes. When I got back in my truck and pulled out of the lot, wouldn't you know it, I ended up directly behind Mr. Rope and Pride as he eased out of the driveway onto the main road. Well, sort of eased. As soon as his front tires dipped into the shallow gutter at the end of the driveway, boom. Like a scene out of a slow-motion car commercial gone wrong, the entire load of decking shifted, then slid off the rack in one dramatic swoop. The boards crashed down onto the hood of his truck, splintering plastic and metal, then fanned out like giant wooden playing cards across the boulevard, blocking 2 lanes of traffic. It was glorious. He slammed on the brakes, jumped out of the cab, and started yelling, not at the mess, oh no, at the boards, the road, the sky, the injustice of the universe, anything but the guy who refused a little friendly advice 5 minutes earlier. As I drove past, I gave him a friendly honk and a big cheerful wave, smiled real wide. He looked at me, and I swear recognition dawned in his eyes. There was a flicker of shame, or maybe just regret, as he realized I had front row seats to his failure and had tried to save him from it. Now, normally I'd be the first one to hop out and help someone reload, but in that moment, nah, he didn't want help earlier, he had it, so I kept driving. Sometimes the best way to help someone is to let them learn the hard way. And this guy, well, I think he's got a much better understanding of kinetic force and friction now, and hopefully a couple of ratchet straps in his truck. I love this. I find that know-it-alls rarely know much of anything, really. Sometimes it takes a hard lesson with natural consequences for these people to learn. And our last story. How I exposed Karen's $50,000 embezzlement scheme. When I bought a house in a peaceful suburban neighborhood, I thought I was settling into quiet bliss. Instead, I walked into a petty dictatorship run by our HOA president, Karen. Karen was the worst kind of leader, obsessed with control, allergic to accountability, and high on power. She enforced ridiculous rules, like fining people $200 for trash cans out at 9:01 a.m., but blatantly ignored the ones that applied to her. Her own yard was a disaster of unpermitted sheds, illegal fence heights, and maintenance closures that somehow only ever benefited her and her family. My crime? Using the wrong stain shade on my fence. The correct one wasn't in stock, so I chose the closest available match. Karen slapped me with a $500 fine and said, "Rules are rules." That was the moment I decided she was going down. I joined the HOA board, played the friendly, curious newbie, eager to help the community. Karen loved having a new admirer and let her guard down fast. For 2 years, I sat through every boring meeting, watched how she operated, and quietly took notes. She bullied other board members into silence, ran unannounced votes with only her allies present, and conveniently lost any homeowner's paperwork that challenged her. But Karen's biggest flaw? She was greedy. Karen always bragged about the HOA's finances being perfectly in order, but something felt off. Our HOA fees were ridiculously high for a neighborhood this size, and yet the community pool was closed for maintenance half the summer, and the landscaping looked like it was being done by toddlers with safety scissors. As treasurer, Karen controlled all the funds and refused to show detailed budgets. I formally requested the financial records, as allowed by HOA bylaws, and she ghosted me. So I went door to door and talked to neighbors. Turns out I wasn't alone. One neighbor was sure Karen used HOA money for a new deck, and others swore she saw Karen's adult son hosting pool parties during the closures. With enough pressure, Karen finally turned over the books. What I found? A financial circus. Receipts were missing, expenses mislabeled, landscaping charges for $15,000 from a company that didn't exist, thousands more on consulting and admin fees that led right to her personal accounts. She was funneling HOA money to herself and splitting profits with her shady contractor friend, who happened to be her cousin. I compiled a full report, spreadsheet, screenshots, notarized statements, everything. I spent a month organizing a neighborhood campaign, talked to every homeowner I could, gave just enough info to get them mad, but saved the bombshells for the annual HOA meeting. That night, the room was packed. Karen strutted to the front and started with her usual smug monologue about all the work she does and how hard it is to lead. I stood up next and asked a simple question about a missing $5,000 line item. She brushed it off, so I handed out copies of my report. Pandemonium. Gasps, shouting, stunned silence. Karen tried to shout over people. "This is taken out of context," she screamed. I called for a vote to remove her immediately. Unanimous. Karen was officially out. We brought in a forensic accountant. Turns out Karen had embezzled over $50,000. She was sued civilly and reported to the police. She had to sell her home to pay restitution. Her cousin's license was revoked, and he's now blacklisted from HOA contracts county-wide. We restructured the HOA completely. Term limits for all board members, dual signature requirements on all expenditures, a public digital ledger so homeowners can see where every dollar goes. Now the pool's open all season. The grass is green and trimmed, and HOA fees are the lowest they've been in a decade. Karen moved to another city and reportedly tried to join a different HOA board. Someone Googled her name mid-meeting and laughed her right out of the door. I have no idea how Karen ended up avoiding prison. The fact that she was free to move to another community and try to join another HOA board just screams of injustice. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.